Morning, everybody. It's a Monday here in the American Upper Midwest. It's a little chilly this morning, but it feels kind of nice actually. A little crisp on the apple, as I say. Today I want to talk about the new Tone Poet release on Blue Note. That's, of course, the great Andrew Hill. Andrew Hill is an atypical Blue Note artist. He's not from the early hard bop era. He comes along in the early 60s and makes a string of 6 or 7 outstanding records at Blue Note. This one was sat on for a while. Did finally see an issue at one point. I think CD maybe only, possibly a while. I'm not positive if Japanese put it out. But here Tone Poet is officially issuing it with the beautiful deluxe cover and the packaging. And it's a double album, which is kind of really on rare ground on the Blue Note catalog. But it's actually only 3 sides. The fourth side of the vinyl is just blank. And it always sounds fun when you put a needle on that. I thought just the label was missing at first, but turns out it was just a blank side. Andrew Hill, very creative, somewhat edgy player. He's not avant-garde, but there's certainly the perimeters of the avant-garde exist in his music. He's definitely pulsing and has a nice driving rhythm to his playing as a pianist. He often has a fairly progressive band around him, with most of the Blue Note cats from 64, 65, 66 kind of working with him in his lineup. This is no exception to that rule. Recorded in 69, so it's actually after the Blue Note sale to Liberty. And it's quite the ensemble of musicians here. You have Woody Shaw, who's one of the great trumpet players, who's kind of on par with a Freddie Hubbard. Just incredibly dimensional, really bright, clean, clear sound with a lot of velocity and force behind what he plays. One of the greatest virtuosos of this era is Woody Shaw. And he's not a guy that I have a lot of records by as a leader, but I have plenty of his side work. A lot of his records as a leader started to come out in the 70s. And as most of you know, I don't collect a lot of 70s jazz. Dizzy Reese appears on the trumpet, the great United Kingdom trumpet player. Julian Priester's on the trombone, and Priester starts off in his career as somewhat of a regular hard bop, proficient player, but he definitely starts to migrate towards the avant-garde into the 60s and then some of the groups he plays with in that era. Bob Northern's on the French horn, who's not a name you see on the Blue Note label very often. Howard Johnson's on the tuba, the bass clarinet. Joe Farrell's on the soprano sax, the tenor sax, the alto flute, and the bass clarinet, and the English horn as well. Andrew Hill's on the piano, Ron Carter's on the bass, and the great Lenny White is on the drums. And if you're not familiar with Lenny White, he does a proto-funk group in the 70s called 29. And Peanut Butter was a big hit, was another big hit. They had 2 big hits in the 70s that if you play for a black audience, they're going to go nuts if they hear that. They're going to be like, oh! It's kind of in that same era as funkin' for Jamaica, Jamaica Funk, Jamaica Queens crew, Bernard Wright, of course. They're a talented group, Lenny White and those cats. But he starts out as more of a traditional jazz drummer and less of a rock drummer. So it's a pretty interesting group. And what I want to show you right away is I want you to close your eyes for a second and picture the sound of a circus escaping. Someone's opened up all the gates, all the cages. There's elephants marching, monkeys swinging from trapeziums. There's lions and tigers vaulting across fields trying to escape. Even the leader of the group himself is out there running away from the circus. And then listen to this. It's tumultuous. And a lot of those bass clarinets and the tuba and Ron Carter on the bass creates this feel of pulsing movement. The elephants are those big tubas and basses, and it's an interesting, slightly dissonant concoction. The horns are giving these kind of droning, descending lines, and like I said, it sounds like a circus break. And I played this whole record yesterday twice. I enjoyed it. It's very post hard bop. It's definitely more in the era of where the fusion starts happening, but Bitches Brew is the same year as this, and this is not that. This is much more compositionally driven and around arrangements, where Bitches Brew feels very cacophonous. This feels very open, and the antelope and everyone's galloping at a great speed. And even the next track, which kind of slows things down, it still has a lot of that same stepping on the clown of a circus nose, the nose of a circus clown. It just has this squawking, honking, textured feel to it. The Andrew Hill has a real interesting approach into his composition and the bandmates he chooses. And a lot of what composition needs is, who am I going to bring in to make what I hear in my head happen? And when you're bringing in French horns and tubas and bass clarinets and this big ensemble of horn players, it's going to allow you to produce and arrange a lot of bizarre composition. And again, Hill's playing himself as a piano player is always kind of centered. He's always going to be playing not being too, he's not Cecil Taylor with it by any means, thank goodness. You know, I have a hard time making it through Cecil Taylor's records. I'll just be honest, most of you who know me know I'm not the biggest fan of Free, and the avant-garde has to have enough melody in it and resolve in it for me to really enjoy it. So I like some, and I enjoy Coltrane's new thing. I can listen to some of those records pretty frequently because of the spirituality and the integrity of what Coltrane's about. You always dig the musician, the artist, and their intercession to the cosmos that Coltrane was always trying to process. But Hill's more of a guy that's got some intellectualism to him. He's got this cerebral approach to music. You can hear the blare of the elephant's trumpets at times. And the Ferris wheel's even rolling down the hill. You know, the entire thing, the circus lights are somehow circling above and flying through the air, lighting up this entire process of the circus escaping across the great English field. It was very visual to me when I listened to it yesterday. I just kept seeing and feeling this type of movement, this type of cacophony, yet a controlled, sweeter sound than anything that you would hear on a Bitches Brew. Again, the playing is just from some of the greats of the time. When you got Woody Shaw laying down fire and all the other cats, the Bob Northern, I hear the French horn quite a lot. I hear the tuba quite a lot of Howard Johnson. The bass clarinets add those reedy baritone and low ends that are just fun to hear. Joe Farrell, who makes a lot of great records at CTI, right around this time he goes to CTI and makes some of the most edgy records on the CTI label. CTI is fairly poppy and centered and based on production and commercial appeal. And Joe Farrell's records there do have certain elements of the avant-garde and some spicier arrangement than you get for most of what CTI's output was. But again, Lenny White, Andrew Hill, and Ron Carter have the percussion kind of locked in step. And so they're just flowing and grooving. Here's the second track. And even that, the first rush of the escape has now passed us. We're in the scene 2. And all of our elephants and birds and monkeys, we're all sitting in a field on our suitcase and luggage just going, now what? Now where are we going? It's got a pastoral, kind of scenic movie vibe to it. And it's not your typical Blue Note fare. You know, again, this is after the Blue Note sale. And so the sounds of Blue Note, once Liberty's in charge, become much more disparate and wider in range. Would Alfred allow this? Alfred's probably still part of this on some level. I don't think he's left the label yet. I think Frank Wolf, he actually was producing on this, Frank Wolf. Compositions by Andrew Hill, everything was composed by Andrew Hill. It's still Rudy Van Gelder. But again, quite a group. Priester adds a lot to the mix. I just enjoy it. Woody Shaw and Dizzy Reese, those trumpets kind of giving those sharp, bright edges and going on these different angles towards each other. It's one of those great Tone Poet releases that you kind of look forward to. I pre-ordered this back in January. It showed up yesterday or the day before, perhaps. Tuba, doing some interesting little lead tuba playing right there. Again, it's supposed to come mid-May. I got it probably a week or so earlier than I thought, which was a nice little surprise. Tone Poet's doing some great stuff. And again, the packaging is beyond reproach. It's just beautiful. The photography is always of that vintage Frank Wolf era. The laminations are just beautiful. The only issue I've ever had with these Tone Poets is this inner seam here tends to split from the vinyl in shipping. And so you take your records out of the jacket and you won't have that issue. But if they do it in shipping, what are you going to do? But again, the music's what matters. I'm not going to get too upset about a little split in my seam. Again, they're giving me such a great value for these records. They could be charging $100 for these and they'd probably sell. And they're only charging $25, $30 through Amazon, which is a good deal. And again, being a 3-sided record, they could have really gorged you on this one. They didn't. So kudos to Tone Poet. Kudos to the business plan behind this. Putting all this great Blue Note stuff out there that's either too expensive to be bought or wasn't properly issued in the first place. And there's such a vault of it, such a glut of it, that they'll be able to issue this Blue Note stuff from the vaults for literally years. And I think most of the rest of what's coming out this year is stuff I already have. There's maybe one Hank Mobley record coming out around Christmas, which I might have to purchase and pre-order that when it becomes available. My wife is over there listening to my Christmas present. She's probably not. She's playing with her plants, planting her sprouties. It's tomato season. She's excited. She gets real excited when she gets to put her fingers in the dirt. She's a dirt digging little gal. We like that about her. Huh. Love you, baby. Anyway, so Andrew Hill's Tone Poet. It's a fantastic new arrival on the Blue Note scene. Something that deserved this deluxe reissuing. I recommend you grab it. And you can hear the evolution of the sound of jazz through the 60s. This is not a record that could have been made in 1958, nor was it. These are records that definitely reflect the changes in jazz as we get into the late 60s. Grasham Mancour could have made this. You know, it's just a different sound that's coming to the fore in jazz by the late 60s. And it's a challenging sound. It's not as sweet to the ears as jazz in the 50s. That was very centered on melody always, and the blues, and was all something you could tap your foot to, and just, you know, it would absorb you. This takes a little bit more of you going to it and saying, okay, I want something a little challenging today. I want some of the plot threads of my film to not always make sense. The average Hollywood blockbuster, everything gets tied up neatly at the end. Jazz by the late 60s left a lot of unresolved plot points. Like, what happened to her? Did she die or did she make it out? What happened to the money? You don't know. It's that kind of movie. And jazz in the late 60s left things unanswered. And again, it's got a certain presence to it that would make it good for the score of some films. So, new Tone Poet, worth grabbing when you have a chance. Beautiful deluxe, everything about it. Talk to you soon. We're going to do another one of those how to build a library episodes coming up later this week. I might do Atlantic. I might do... Not sure. We'll see. Peace.